Good morning and welcome to episode 251 of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. And today we're going to focus on looking at two lessons that are a continuation of what we looked at before. Because when we fully understand who we are, that we are here for a very specific reason, every single one of us that is becoming consciously aware of who we are chose to incarnate, chose to have an experience of awakening. And with awakening, then comes ascension. Of course, you can wake up and not ascend if you want to. And that's kind of an oxymoron because if you're going to wake up, you're going to ascend somewhat. But you can choose not to fully embody what you are awakening to. By that, I mean the ego is going to become spiritual. The ego is going to gain all of the information that we're reading, we're learning, you participate in a workshop, you absorb information, you read a book, you are like, part of the Awareness Academy where we're studying A Course in Miracles in depth. The ego is learning right along with you. And we've got to understand that process because as a matter of fact, it's only the ego that learns what is truth within us, our capital S self, our higher self, our soul, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't need to learn anything. It is all knowing. As a matter of fact, it's the part of us that is connected to God. It's an aspect of God. It's a piece of God. However you want to describe it, the part in you that is God itself within you doesn't need to learn a thing. I mean, think about it. The all-knowing doesn't need to learn, right? But here's what happens. The all-knowingness that is within us, think of that as a light because it is. We are the light of the world. So let's use metaphors that make sense with what we're learning with from A Course in Miracles. You are the light of the world. So what happens to that light? And some of us here have grandchildren. We have seen these little grandbabies be born with this beautiful light. They have this innocence, they have this perfection about them. They're just being, they're not doing anything. I mean, what 2, 3-year-old contributes to the rent or takes care of, the garbage and makes the meal or even makes their own bed? It doesn't happen. They don't need to do a thing. They get to be, which means that they're teaching us what beingness is all about. They don't think that they're lazy because they don't move from the bed. They're 3 months old. How can they move? Does that make them lazy? So when we recognize that light is the essence of who we are, because these little ones remind us of that light that is within us, that is in a child, what happened to it? Well, this is where it's really helpful to keep A Course in Miracles practical. And not just A Course in Miracles, any process that is assisting you through awakening, keep it super simple. The ego complicates things incredibly. It's our job. This is how we cultivate gentleness. This is how we cultivate honesty. These are the characteristics of a teacher of God. If you become somebody who becomes committed to be a master of the teachings of the course, you become a teacher of God. That's the title that is given to us through A Course in Miracles. Somebody who was 100% committed to mastering these teachings. That means you embody them. You become the master teacher of the course because you have chosen to become the master student. So then here we go back to that conundrum. What are we becoming a student of? If we already know everything, if there's something within us that already knows everything, why do we have to study any of this? Well, this is where honesty really is helpful. And sometimes we don't get to this point. I know I didn't until you're further along in the journey. But when we get clear that the light that we are, the essence of the truth that we are, that we're born with, it's within us. You cannot not have that within you. That part gets slowly dimmed down. It's like a light switch, like you turn the dimmer down, you turn that light down. You can see it in a child. Over time, it's really, it's really bright when they're born. There's this perfection, this essence. Everybody wants to hold a baby because the baby reminds us of who we are. It's resonating in such a way that it activates within us the remembering of that, and we want some of that. So what happens to that little baby is what happens to every one of us. The dimmer gets turned down. As the dimmer gets turned down, we have, the room gets a little darker. What is that darkness? That darkness is the ego gets turned up. So think about it very logically. In a room, when the light is fully on, that is what we are, that's the truth of who we are, fully turned on. When we begin to turn down the light, we're not turning up the darkness dimmer. There's no switch to let in darkness. But when you turn down the light, darkness is what shows up. So every single one of us, if we are not presently aware of the light that we are, and then extend it, shine it, be it, allow it to express itself, it atrophies. It's like it's not being used. So it dims down. In that dimming down, the ego is gathering information. It's learning things. Who am I? Who am I supposed to be? What I'm supposed to do and have and become. And that is what then takes over. So it's not that there is a source called the ego, because the ego is not a source. It's that we are not speaking to, honoring the light that we are. So we accept the programming because the ego is a thought system. We all have to fully understand what that means. All you're working with when you're operating with ego is thoughts. That's all you're doing. You're changing your thoughts. This is why it's key that we understand what the Course is telling us. It is letting us know that we have to become observant of these thoughts. So who's awakening? Is not the ego awakening, because the ego thought system, the thoughts that we have is what cause us to be asleep. So the ego's not going to wake up. The ego's just going to take the information that we are receiving that should wake us up. Well, what wakes up? What wakes up is the presence within you that is choosing to have this experience of separation, that is recognizing, wait a second, there's more to me than just what I'm believing there's to me, that we call the ego. That part that feels like, no, there's more to me. That part is the one that is awakening. That part is the one that is becoming this. This is why we call it awareness. Aware that we have an option between two thought systems. The one that is the truth of who we are. We don't need to learn the truth of who we are. That truth is within us. We just didn't use it. Instead of acknowledging the child when it's born, when it's 3, when it's 8, when it's 10, when it's 20, when it's 40, when it's 60, when it's 80, as the light of the world, instead of seeing everybody as already whole, perfect, and complete, well, because we're not remembering and utilizing the language that is absolutely congruent with the truth of who we are, we begin to believe the things that we're not. So the part of us, and this is why I teach it this way, because it's the way that it was easiest for me, and is how it was shown to me to understand what was happening, was to think of myself as an observer. And as the observer, observe, not, okay, this coming out, I'm not absorbing, even though I really am in a way, I'm observing the thoughts in my mind. When you sit, and this takes time to be able to just sit, because we have been told if you're just sitting doing nothing, you're idle, you're lazy. So we got to work through so many different beliefs that keep us very deliberately from sitting in stillness and being able to observe these thoughts in our mind. And when we get quiet enough, when we decide, okay, I'm just going to watch these thoughts, this is why the Course in Miracles lays out inside of the lessons very specific lessons that teach us not only when to do it, how long to do it, and what to do when we are in these moments of practice, so that we can become the observer, the one who is aware of what's going on in our head. At the end of the day, what we're doing is we are recognizing the thoughts that are not congruent with the light that we are. And when we don't think this thought, we turn up the dimmer. It goes up automatically. If you don't believe lies, you automatically reverse that. You replace that with truth. I'm not good enough. Well, I'm holy. Of course I'm good enough because I am holy. You don't need to keep thinking I'm not good enough when you know you are holy. So that turns up the dimmer for the light that you are. You feel it. You feel the difference. You feel the confidence. You feel the peace of not having to keep seeking because you're not good enough. You got to keep working. You got to keep proving. So much of the doing drops away when you accept the being what you are. And this is what really takes time. And the course tells us it takes time to undo what got created over time. So over many decades, we began to believe things that are not true because we didn't question them. Everybody else did it too. We didn't question them. We turned down the dimmer, we turned down our light, and the darkness, the confusion took over. Now, that's just part of the plan. The only way to undo this and to awaken is to reverse the plan. There's just no other way. You reverse the process. I believe something that's not true. Well, what is the lie? You, the presence of awareness, have to be honest. This is not true. It's not true that I am insignificant. It's not true that, somebody else has control over my feelings. All these things that we're learning, you have to decide this is not true. What is the truth? The acceptance of the truth turns the dimmer up. So, in a way, it appears that I'm learning that I'm holy, but you're really not learning. You're remembering, and then you're allowing your holiness to be expressed. But the only way to express your holiness is to stop talking about what's wrong with you or believing what's wrong with you. So it's a very simple process. It's a process of, it's like when you get a present for Christmas or your birthday or whatever holiday you celebrate. And there's a beautiful gem inside of this box that is covered up with tissue papers and in the box and wrapping paper. The whole point of getting into that box is to get the jewel that's inside, or for our brother Richard, the stone that is in there, that beautiful crystal that is in that box. You want to get to it. Well, how do you get to it? You reverse the process of how that crystal got into the box. You put it in, you go and you get a box and you put it in the box, and then you wrap it up and you cover it up and you put the lid and you put the wrapping paper and you put the bow. We're removing those things almost through the identical process that they were layered on. The fact that the light that you are has always been in there does not diminish the value of the gem that you are. You are a priceless piece of God itself. Every single one of us, that is what we are. We can notice that in a child more so because, they're not talking back. So the essence is coming through, but we notice it in them more so because our ego seems to get quiet when we're in the presence of a child. We innately feel that desire to hold it close, to hold on to that baby. I remember, my daughter, when Ryder was teeny weeny, we would go somewhere and it's total strangers. Oh, the cute baby, and they want to come and touch it. And I remember that used to happen with my kids, but I don't remember the details with my kids because it's so long ago. But I remember it because it was just recent with Ryder, with Ellie. People want to come and touch that baby. They don't even know that baby, but they feel like, oh, such a cute little baby. Of course, it drove my daughter crazy, but I'm like, these people are just coming in to plug in, which is beautiful. It's to me, it was like, wow, they can feel that pull to the truth of who they are. They don't have the conscious awareness, but that's what they're doing. And we think that we're honoring this little child, but what's happening is we're honoring the child within ourselves who is being drawn to plug back in, to remember, to turn up that dimmer. So, what is this whole spiritual journey about? We're training our mind, primarily the ego, to remember information. It appears that we're learning new information, but every time that we learn something, and we accept it, we are aware of the truth and we accept it, it's like an unlearning. It's like you're taking off the wrapping paper. That goes away. You are remembering who you are, and that becomes more active, more you notice it, you sense it. And here's one of the beautiful things about knowing that you're on the path. There's only three things that you have to focus on. You feel more peace, you feel more joy, and love is all that you can extend. Now, those three things, you can use those words, so it doesn't make sense to anybody. But when you're on this journey and you practice honesty, those things feel very different. Love is not about what you get, it's about what you give. Peace is not about having the perfect surroundings and now you're at the beach and you could be at peace, or now you're on the boat and you could be at peace, or now you're in the cabin or in the woods or you're whatever and you can be at peace. You recognize that peace comes from mastery over your mind. Your mind is no longer, the ego mind's no longer talking. The wrapping paper is not distracting you. The darkness in the room is not, it has no power over you. Peace comes from knowing, no, there is a light inside of me, and that light connects me directly to God. I am one with God, which means I'm one with all that is. Peace means I'm in amidst my family. I'm amongst that which I am connected to, all of it. So when you recognize that that peace is nothing more than the recognition of your oneness, Janie, you talk about this often. It's the atonement. It's the acceptance that you're one with everything. To the ego, peace is I go away from the chaos, and then I'm at peace because I don't have to think about all those things. And that's lovely. Enjoy it. But peace to one who is aware of what's going on means that I recognize I am at one with all that is. Therefore, I have nothing to worry about. People will come and go and they'll do their things, and you can be in the middle of the most chaotic experience of your life. You could be in the middle of going through your treatment for a disease. You can be in the middle of a hurricane, in the middle of a divorce, in the middle of bankruptcy. You're at peace because you know all of it is playing out as it should, because all of it is part of oneness. If you have understood what love is, you're just giving love to everything around you that is chaotic because you recognize it as a call for love. You recognize what's taking place, and because you know you're one with all that is, you're extending love to yourself through everything else. And that's what those two things mean. Then when you get to joy, well, joy is a recognition that because you are at peace, because you're one with everything that is, and you're loving all of it because love is what you are and love is what you extend. Joy is the frequency of the essence of who you are that recognizes, all right, well, I wonder what kind of fun I'm going to have with this. How can I turn this situation into the most joyful experience that I can possibly have? When we understand love, joy, and peace from an awakened perspective, that accompanies you wherever you are, wherever you go, because it comes from the essence of knowing the truth of who you are. When it's used by the world, joy is what I get when I have a moment of I don't know. I go to the store and I bought something. Oh, joy! I'm excited. I'm happy. Oh, and I love this outfit, or I'm at peace because I'm going to go on vacation in 3 weeks. Yes, I can't wait. I'll be at peace then. All of those things are all well and good, but when they're coming from the egoic perspective, they are not permanent. They are going to be fleeting moments that we have and we get to experience. The journey is about understanding the ways that we block those things from being our reality, that peace, that joy, that love that we are, from being our reality. Because when you look at the chart, those are the highest frequencies. As a matter of fact, love, joy, peace is the highest frequency, because peace comes only when we recognize the atonement. We need to be at one with everything so that why would you have fear of all that is you? And of course, that high frequency that Jesus exhibited for us, he was the perfect example. At peace with, oh, you're going to kill me. That's okay. I'm still going to love you because you're my brothers and sisters. Well, let me enjoy the process. How do you enjoy the process of being crucified? You're not resisting it. You're not pushing back. You're not blaming somebody. You're not defending yourself. You're not doing all those things. You're literally the presence of a high frequency, observing what is happening, recognizing this is what is. Now I understand that to be at this level of awareness requires that we do the work. You can't skip grades to get to that awakened state. You have to do everything. You have to practice this. You have to embody it. You have to experience it within every cell of your body so that it is true for you. It is not a performance that the ego that got spiritualized is putting on. Now, I put on lots of spiritual egoic performances because I was faking it until I made it. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with thinking, well, yeah, I'm at peace with this terrible thing that's happening. I'm at peace with my divorce when you're really not at peace with it. But saying that you're at peace with it causes the part of you that is beginning to be honest to realize, well, I'm really not at peace. Why am I not at peace with this? Well, I don't want this to happen, or I'm scared that this is going to happen. Okay, then that's where you look at where is there wrapping paper still there blocking the gem that you are? Where is the tissue paper that you haven't gotten to? Where's the box? Where are the things that are blocking you from really truly feeling that peace? So we learn spirituality. We don't fully, completely embody it, but then honesty kicks in. And as the one who's aware, whether you're honest or not, you begin to self-correct. Now, the last couple of weeks, we looked at lessons 31 and 32 because we have to acknowledge that we're not a victim of the world we see. And if we're not a victim of the world and we are gaining our power, then we have to acknowledge that we invented the world that we see. This is a journey of taking 100% responsibility for being the powerful being that we are. At the end of the day, that is what we are remembering. We are reactivating the power of God within us to co-create with God. But because we've been co-creating with the ego, with other people's egos, we have been co-creating a world that inevitably has to shrink because the ego is selfish. The ego is all about me. And in the ones who in this 3D world on planet Earth, power comes from who has control over others and who has more money who has more money so that you can do more things to control others. So the 3D world is filled with misinformation that has us barking up the wrong tree. When we make this journey and we begin to realize the purpose of this path is to return us back to the truth of who we are, where we recognize that we are all one. Why this crazy competition? Why can't we share? Well, all of those things will become normal. Sharing and cooperating, collaborating will become normal when we're not operating from that sense of it's all about me, it's survival, I got to take care of number one. When we realize that we're part of a collective, when we understand a little bit more metaphysics and we understand that we are one because it's all energy, it's all consciousness, whatever label you want to put on it, it's all the substance, the substrate. Again, it doesn't matter what word you use, everything is made of the exact same thing. And you understand what the Course is teaching us. We're all in the mind of God, imagined. So the substance that holds us together is that God has imagined us into existence. So every one of us matters. Every one of us has value. Every one of us is important. So when we get to that place that we understand that, we let go of those egoic beliefs and we ground ourselves in practicing the truth that we are remembering is true about how we are with one another. So there's a total reversal that happens, but that can only happen if you accept that you're not a victim at all. And the reason you're not a victim is because every single one of us, when God imagined us, it gave us, it's like God breathed life into us. We are the ones who decided, let me turn my back on God. Let me not be loving. Let me see what it feels like to not be loving. And of course, then the ego took off. No different than the dimmer in the room. The light is on bright. Let me see what it's like to turn down the light. Ooh, it gets a little darker. It gets a little darker. You turn it all the way down. It's pretty dark. It's very dark. God didn't say you can't do that. God said you have free will to lower your light however low you want to turn it down, but it will never be extinguished because you're made of that light. And that is one of the things that to me is so beautiful about A Course in Miracles. It always brings us back to God loves us. God adores us. I even wrote a newsletter about that if you want a little reminder that you are adored by God. Because if you were imagined by God, it's because God wanted you here. And when God imagines us, light is what we are made of. We cannot not be made of that light. What else is God going to create from? Especially when there's no source of darkness. There is zero source of darkness in the world. Not a single person gets a bill from the dark company for the darkness that happens in your room at night. That does not happen. So what is going on? We're not using the light. We're not turning it on. And, if you think about that analogy of the power company, we turn the lights off because it's so expensive to have the lights on. So we've even been conditioned to think, oh, well, it's going to cost me more to be the light that I am. Well, that's what part of the conditioning that we have been lied to about, that we have to begin to accept the truth of who we are, which is why in the not too distant future, it is going to be common, as it was hundreds of years ago, to have free energy because there is light, there is source, there is power, there is energy. It is available. But what has happened, the selfish, greedy egos has made sure that they make it expensive to maintain this idea. Well, you don't want to use too much light because it's expensive. So we prefer to be in the dark because it's cheap. Well, that's actually costing us way more because we're accepting things that are not true. So the more that we come in and accept who we are, and you accept you cannot possibly be a victim, you're made of God, you're made of light, turn your light on so you can see more clearly. Then everything changes when you can see it clearly. So today we're going to combine lessons 33 and 34. Lesson 33 says, there is another way of looking at the world. That means you have to make a conscious decision. This is how the presence of awareness begins to be activated. There is another way of looking at the world. My ego looks at it this way. You begin to separate yourself from that ego. If you're not the victim, and this is what makes you a victim, is all the lies of the ego, you separate yourself from that, meaning you got to turn your mind on itself. You've got to begin to question what you're thinking. This is the kind of work that is really taught through in the teachings of Buddha. Buddhism is a turning inward and looking at every single thought that we're thinking so that we can become aware of what is it that we're believing. So when you decide that you're not a victim of the world you see, then that you've invented it, now you begin to take responsibility for it. You begin to take ownership for, well, what do I want to experience instead? So what is this other way of looking at the world? I've only been looking at it from one perspective. It's the ego, and it's selfish, and it's greedy, and it's about power and money and having and accumulating and becoming. Well, what is the other way? This is where the Course takes us on a whole new journey. There's a whole new world available to us. But this is where we cultivate not only open-mindedness, be willing to accept other things, even if they're totally different. I remember sitting, grappling with what had been taught to me was true about God and Jesus and all these Catholic things. And then I'm reading things that were totally the opposite. And my brain for a while felt like it was like the screws were corroded, and it was difficult. I had a really hard time accepting two different things about the same thing that I had always thought about. So you become open-minded. And the way that I did it for me is I couldn't say, well, this is the truth when I believe this. I would say, what if there's a possibility that this might also be true? Let me be open to that possibility. I don't have to accept it as true, but why not be open to it? It's no different than when we go to the store and we're buying things. Well, do I like this one or not? You know, if you're used to this particular brand and then there's another one on sale, you go, huh, let me try that. It doesn't mean that you love it already, but you're open to the possibility. Let me try it. I'm going to save a little bit of money. Oh, I like the packaging. And now all of a sudden, you're open to the possibility of doing something different. I remember going to the store with my mother, and there were only certain brands that she liked. And man, when they didn't make those brands anymore, she was so like upset. She couldn't have what she wanted to eat. Where for whatever reason, for me, I was always open to possibilities. Let me try this one. Let me try this one. I like it. I don't like it. You know, whether I returned it and got my money back or I just didn't buy it again, I was always open to possibilities. We got to do the same thing with our thoughts, with our ideas. Be open to something totally different. So when you are willing to recognize that there is another way of looking at the world, you begin the process not only of open-mindedness that's already started, but then you begin to become a little bit more humble because you realize, oh, you know, my way is not the only way. It's not my way or the highway. It's my way or another way. And when you begin to look at these other possibilities, then what begins to happen is this is the training that Jesus is giving us over here. It says, you know, today's idea is an attempt. We're just trying here to recognize that you can shift your perception of the world in both its outer and inner aspects. You can shift your perspective from low frequency and lift to higher frequency. Because if everything is made of non-physical energy, we'll call it that, then everything can be calibrated. The more contracted you are, the darker it gets, the more tight and tense you get, you can calibrate that. That calibrates. This is what the brilliance of Dr. David Hawkins in kinesiology, that's the gift God gave us, imagined David to be born, to be incarnated, and provide us this information that would assist us on this journey, a little piece of the puzzle. Measure everything by its vibration. Understand what vibration is all about, because when you understand frequency, then you understand what feeling is all about. High frequency is an openness, it's a peacefulness, it's a love that is extending and flowing through us. Low frequency, it's a fear, it's a contraction. I'm alone, it's me against the world. I got to fight, I got to protect, I got to defend. I may have a little joy on Saturday afternoons. I may have a little fun on Friday when I get paid, but I'm worried, I'm nervous. You know, I can't be at peace while I'm having fun because I got to go back to work on Monday. Anyhow, you begin to understand that the ways of the ego not only are temporary, but they're totally backwards to what God wants us to experience. So when you understand frequency and you understand how to rate the vibration based on how you feel, tight and tense, you're closed off, at ease and at peace, you've opened up. Well, you learn how that you can shift your perception. I can shift from looking at things in the outer world, I can shift to seeing what's going on inside in the inner world. You realize that you have the ability to focus your attention on both things. This is when you really become self-aware. You're mastering your ability to be that third presence that is the observer of the ego thoughts and God's thoughts. And this is the one that's awakening, the one that is recognizing I can look at both. So then it tells us, you know, to spend a couple of, 5 minutes in the morning, devoting time in the morning and in the evening to this application. In these practice periods, the idea should be repeated as often as you find comfortable, though unhurried applications are essential. Ego wants you to rush through this. Holy Spirit wants you to take your time, watch that thought. Oh, why am I thinking about something that happened 3 years ago? Why am I worried about what's going to happen three years from now? You're just observing. You're practicing becoming an observer so that you can shift from what's going on inside of me to what's going on outside of me. Oh, I got upset because of what I remember from 3 years ago. That's happening inside of me. What happened 3 years ago? I got divorced or I got fired. Okay, that was outside of me. You're realizing the things outside, the things inside have some kind of a correlation. So you alternate between surveying your outer and inner perceptions, but without an abrupt sense of shifting. Don't try and go too fast. You just let it play out. Paragraph 2 says, merely glance casually around the world you perceive as outside yourself, then close your eyes and survey your inner thoughts with equal casualness. You are recognizing what is going out there. Oh, look, it's so it's so peaceful, or whatever. I'm so happy about this thing that I'm going to go do tomorrow. And then all of a sudden you get a thought, oh, it's going to rain. It's going to ruin the day. You're just paying attention. You're just paying attention to what's going outside, paying attention to what's happening inside. And we want to do it casually because we are becoming aware of our ability to be the presence of awareness. So merely glance casually around the world you perceive as outside yourself, and close your eyes and survey your inner thoughts with equal casualness. Try to remain equally uninvolved in both and to maintain this detachment as you repeat the idea throughout the day. You're realizing that you don't have to react. Just because you're upset, you don't have to react. Just because you hear something, you don't have to pick up the phone and call somebody and tell them what happened. You're realizing that you can be an observer. An observer is the one that's open-minded. It's observing all of these things, not making decisions, not acting from anything, just observing. Because how else are you going to find another way to look at the world if you don't, unless you don't immediately react the way that you would want to look at the world? So you're training yourself in restraining yourself, staying, quiet in the midst of the turmoil that the ego would like to activate. This is how you cultivate gentleness. You cultivate patience. You don't have to get up and let them know what you're thinking right away. You can be patient. The right time will show up. This is cultivating trust. You're cultivating faith that if God created you and created everything, that this whole thing about atonement, this whole thing about oneness, maybe there's something to it. So practice this ability to be present with a willingness to see things differently. You want to find that other way of looking at the world. Paragraph 3 tells us that those shorter exercise periods should be as frequent as possible because we're training our mind, we're changing our perception. So we're shifting. So we're dropping in this information to train the ego, really so that the ego can see, oh, it's okay. I'm doing, this is going to be good. I'm going to become spiritual. And the ego will go along while you're training the one who is awakening, the one who is becoming aware. That part of us that is aware is neutral. It doesn't have an opinion. It just recognizes everything based on how it feels. You're learning to feel deeply that peace, that love, that joy that I talked about that are high frequency. You're realizing that feels way better, which means you're coming in and accepting that there's a guidance system that will guide you based on how you feel. And how you feel has to do with what thought system you're believing. So the other way of looking at things is, instead of the world doing something or something happening, that you feel a reaction, then you react to it, and you got to do something to stop it. You are learning to stay peaceful. It's all happening for the greater good. And in here, let me see another way. Another way means you don't jump and do and react to this one. You begin to respond from a more peaceful place. You begin to see how everything fits in a perfect order, how there is a purpose for everything. You become an observer of that. And that's what these practice periods are helping us see in the quiet of our own consciousness, by yourself. You don't have to do this exercise with anybody else. You just do it alone, and you're realizing, whoa, I can change my mind. I can be open-minded about these things. So then the next part of that, let's see, paragraph C. So the shorter periods, we're going to do it frequently. Specific applications of today's idea should also be made immediately when any situation arises which tempts you to become disturbed. This is when you have an irritation that's an invitation. That irritation is saying, okay, let me go in here, let me practice neutrality, let me observe things from a peaceful place. There is another way of looking at this. You're literally training yourself to say, I don't need to be right about the old way I did it. Let me try this other brand. Let me do something differently. The last paragraph here says, remember to apply today's idea the instant you are aware of distress. That irritation invites you immediately just to become aware. Be the observer. Right now, all you're doing is saying there is another way to look at this. You're just becoming open-minded to there is another way to look at this. The programming in your mind only looks at things one way. You are saying, I'm going to look beyond the programming. I'm going to be open to something else informing me. So it may be necessary to take a minute or so to sit quietly and repeat the idea to yourself several times. You close your eyes, and because when you close your eyes, it probably helps you out with the application, so you're not distracted out there. You can come in here and feel what's happening inside. The next lesson, lesson 34, this one says, I could see peace instead of this. Where lesson 33 is that there is another way of looking at it. I may not quite know what it is, but I'm becoming aware that I don't have to do it this way. Now I'm saying, well, I could see peace instead. And peace, it's a natural progression to peace, because when you begin to practice the willingness to look at things differently, it feels more peaceful not to react, not to have to do it the way you've always done it. Now there's something that's happening. This is that third aspect of yourself that's waking up. This is the presence of awareness that is becoming aware. But it's peaceful when I don't do it the old way. Now you are setting the stage for peace feeling natural, and you begin to want more of it. And as we become more comfortable with peace, that's something that is not of the ego. Ego doesn't like peace unless it's on vacation or on a hammock somewhere and it's short term. Then you come inside and you begin to cultivate that awareness that peace comes from not reacting to the old ways of doing things that you were programmed with. There is another way, and it feels more peaceful. So now you want more of that. So in this particular lesson, the idea for today begins to describe the conditions that prevail in the other way of seeing. Peace of mind is clearly an internal matter. It must begin with your own thoughts and then extend outward. It is from your peace of mind that a peaceful perception of the world arises. This is where, when we sit, we observe those thoughts, the thought that wants to judge, and then there's the presence of awareness that says, no, I'd rather see peace instead of this. From that place, you're open-minded to begin to cultivate a relationship of trusting that inner guidance. Well, if we're one, maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe they cut me off in traffic because they were in a hurry to get to the hospital. Maybe my friend was mean because she's having a bad day. Let me not take it personally. I don't want to give up my peace. Let me be in a state that I don't know what's going on with them, but let me see them as the brothers and sisters that we are, because I want to experience more of the atonement. I'm comfortable with the idea that we are all one. This begins to give us the ability to see things very differently. Instead of being offended by what happened to us, we realize, no, I'm not going to put that offensiveness inside of me. I'd rather be in a state of not knowing. Open-mindedness is I don't know what anything is for. I mean, I really don't know. So why get offended if I don't know? Well, this strengthens the ability to be honest. And as we are being honest and we have chosen peace, we choose not to think a thought that's going to pull us out of that peace. And when these things become mechanically clear that you got to do this and these steps follow one after the other, then you see that there is a perfect sequence of cause and effect. And then you begin to realize, wait a second, I am as powerful as somebody like Jesus. I can overcome the things of this world. And you begin to accept who you are as a powerful being, which is why you can't be a victim of the world. And these things begin to come together and they click. So paragraph number 2 says, 3 longer practice periods are required for today's exercises. One in the morning, one in the evening are advised, with an additional one to be undertaken at any time in between that seems more conducive to readiness. All applications should be done with your eyes closed. It is your internal world to which the application of today's idea should be made. So we're focusing inside. I can choose peace instead of that immediate reaction. I can stay at peace instead of needing to be right. I can stay at peace. I like this peace. Whoa, this is really nice in here. You know what? Yeah, this feels better than being right. The more that you do that, the more that you realize the correlation between a mind that doesn't know what's going on, that's not assuming it's right, and a mind that is open. Open-mindedness means anything is possible. That's when we're practicing neutrality, so that presence of awareness that is neutral because it's not conditioned. Think about it that way. The presence of awareness is not conditioned. The ego is conditioned. We're awakening the part of us that can be aware of the world without any thoughts. It is simply observing the thought system of the ego and the thought system of God. And then that presence of awareness that is neutral becomes more and more who we really become, who we allow ourselves to be that observer. Paragraph number 3 says, some 5 minutes of mind searching are required for each of the longer practice periods. And this is key. Here we're given 3 steps. And it's really important to understand these steps because these are consistent steps that you will always use while you are training your mind. These things won't be necessary when your mind is trained. You don't need to do these 3 steps, but these are the 3 steps to really help you in the beginning of your committed practice to wanting to shift from being a victim of the world to being the observer of it, to being the one who chooses peace no matter what. So here we go. Step number 1, you search your mind for fear thoughts, anxiety-provoking situations, offending personalities or events, or anything else about which you are harboring unloving thoughts. So step 1 is you are going to search your thoughts, the things that are fearful. This is why that irritation is always helpful. Number 2, you're going to look for unloving thoughts. That's it. Fear blocks love. So you're going to look at fear thoughts. What am I thinking about this situation? This is terrible. This shouldn't be happening. How can they be bombing those people? How can they be hurting those people? These activate fear. Then you're going to recognize that they are blocking love. So yes, it's a fear thought, but it's also a unloving thought underneath that. How could they do that? That means I'm not loving that brother because I'm judging that brother or that sister for doing this thing that is activating the fear in me. So we have to pull those 2 things together. There's the fear thought that you become aware of first, and then there's the honesty of recognizing that underneath that fear is an unloving thought. And that unloving thought is ultimately our choice to turn down the dimmer. Because if the dimmer is full on like a baby, love is all that they're extending. What little 3-month-old is spewing fear on anybody? They're not doing that. So the dimmer is the slowly through time, we turn down the dimmer, we stop loving, we start fearing. So we have to, number 1, become aware of the fear thought because that comes first. And then number 2, look at how that blocks love. It is unloving. So you pay attention to those 2 things. Then the next thing is you note them all casually, repeating the idea for today slowly as you watch them arise in your mind, and let each one go to be replaced by the next. This is step 3. So let's think of an example here. The fear thought. Oh, I'm afraid that, let me think of something. I'm afraid they're going to raise the prices of gasoline. Fear-based thought. The unloving thought is telling me I can't afford it. It's going to be terrible for my family. So now I'm activating a frequency of distress. I'm not trusting that things are going to be okay. So the fear thought, the gas price is going to go up or the egg price or whatever it is. that has a consequence. This is why we have to understand the fear thought is what the ego thinks is logical. The price is going to go up. Of course, this is terrible. The unloving part of that is the frequency in my body has to go down. So I'm deliberately turning down my light, getting darker, getting more into fear, worry, concern, which means I'm not trusting that God has my back. I'm not accepting that I'm one with all that is. When I see that, oh, price of gas may go up. If I love myself, then I will go immediately to what the Course teaches. You know what? I'm entitled to miracles. Something is going to happen that is going to be for the greater good of all. Love says, I am expecting something better because I'm connected to all of it, and everything works for the greater good of all. That's the way God has designed it. So why is the price of gasoline going up? Because there are certain beings who are not following these principles, and instead of doing something for the greater good of all, they're in egoic selfishness. They're doing things for their benefit. Because they're doing things for their benefit doesn't mean that I need to activate distress within me. It doesn't mean that I need to not be loving towards them. If anything, I should have more compassion. They don't know that there is another way. In their greed and their selfishness, they don't understand generosity. They don't understand that we're all one. They don't understand that there's more than enough to go around. So I'm sorting out the thing that I think causes fear from the thing that I'm doing to myself by having an unloving thought that usually is hardly ever consciously aware of. We know what we're mad about, but we don't realize that has an effect which lowers our frequency. That's why we have to catch that unloving thought, because it always comes back to hurt me. And that's the thing about judging others and blaming others. It's always like drinking poison, expecting them to die. I was sharing this with my daughter the other day. She goes, "Mommy, that's a funny thing that you're saying, but it makes perfect sense. When I'm mad at somebody else, I'm drinking the poison. I'm making myself upset, and they're going about their merry way. They don't even know that you're upset." So we have to be clear that the ego is invested in our lower vibration, because the ego can only be helpful to itself, it's survival of the fit. That's why I told you ego is selfish. If you lower your frequency, if you become unloving towards others, you are feeding your ego. It's like, oh yeah, I convinced her to lower her frequency because we're blaming out there. It's their fault and she should feel bad. We need to reverse that. This is why we have to become open-minded. Just because my ego wants to be offended doesn't mean that I need to feed it. As a matter of fact, if I love me, I'm not going to feed the ego. I am going to decide to have a loving thought, which means I go to God. I don't know what anything is for. God, why are the prices of gas going up? If you become a student of what's happening in the world, 8 billion beings who are going, who are in different levels of consciousness, you will see that there are some down here in total terror. There are some who are in a place of revenge, and they're attacking somebody else because they came and took their oil, so they're going to bomb somebody else. We're watching that play out in the Middle East, all the bombing and the terrorism over oil. But it has consequences on everybody. Some are going to be really afraid. Some are in revenge. Some are doing something about it. Some are saying, let's come up with alternative ways of doing things. So the more open-minded you are, the more you can see all the different levels of consciousness playing out. So when you move to the place that you're ready to let go, that you're ready to replace this is what I call, this is exactly what shift and lift is all about. The one practice that has been the only tool that I ever teach, because it's the only one that I've ever needed to use. And then I read A Course in Miracles and boom, there it is. So one, the irritation is an invitation. Look at what you're afraid of. Two, look at what it costs you. You accept it. Okay, I'm having that fearful thought. Then what do I want to do with it? I want to shift it. Instead of being unloving to myself, I want to love myself. And how do you love yourself? Stop having those thoughts that are judgmental. Go to open-mindedness. Go to tolerance. Be aware there are lots of things happening. Then you go to the place where you get to shift from fear to love. When you do that, then acknowledge to yourself, I did that. I shifted me out of fear and into love. I shifted me out of worry and concern and anxiety into peace. You're taking full responsibility of what's going on inside of you. Why? Because you're not a victim of the world you see, you're the creator of it. But it all starts with that awareness that you are in control of how you feel. And how you feel determines how the world is experienced. And this is why it's so important that we must take that step of total responsibility. You cannot understand that peace is available to you unless you have made a decision that you're done with playing a victim. Once you're done with playing a victim and you take full responsibility, this is all you have to do. You shift and you lift your vibration. You're in charge of the elevator going up and down. You go up and you experience love, joy, and peace, or you go down and experience anger, resentment, and revenge. So you are always in control of what you are feeling inside. That is how you become you begin to accept how powerful you are. And of course, somebody who has mastered peace within, because they're the master of their mind, they are the ruler of the thoughts in their head. Well, as we become there are more of us around like this, we're waking up in all sorts of systems. We're waking up and becoming aware of being more loving as teachers. I was listening to this woman, some of us listened to her in the Awareness Academy the other night, who is in England. She's a headmistress, and she is stating the obvious that the training, the programming that we're receiving that goes against the truth of who we are is the cause of our sense of victimization. Somebody else did it to me. When you begin to take responsibility for who you are, you don't point the fingers. Can you imagine people waking up to this idea, this knowledge, this novel idea of personal responsibility in the government sector, in the schooling system, in the medical world, in the police department? It's happening, friends, which is a beautiful thing. It's happening. Awakening is accelerating. So let's go on to the next paragraph 4. If you begin to experience difficulty in thinking of specific subjects, continue to repeat the idea to yourself in an unhurried manner without applying it to anything in particular. Be sure, however, not to make any specific exclusions. This happens a lot when the ego begins to get onto us, when the part of us that likes to control and likes to be right begins to realize that we are willing to go to neutrality, we're going to let them off the hook. Internally, you're going to have a battle inside of you, because there are two battlegrounds, the one inside of you and the one out that gets projected out there. When you begin to become self-aware, you're going to internally have an inner battle. Be prepared for that. The ego is going to say, we're not going to let them off the hook. But internally, you're going to say, no, I want peace instead of being right. That's when you begin to really take power and responsibility over what you want to feel. We've allowed the egoic mind to be in control. We are taking that power back. And it will feel like a little bit of a struggle, like you're going, you're schizophrenic or you're bipolar or whatever. You got two voices in your head. That's all right. You're gonna survive. You're gonna be okay. You just sit there expecting the miracle. You're entitled to it, but you're not going to have it unless you receive it. And by receiving it, that means you take responsibility for, yep, I've got a voice telling me, why are you letting them get away with this? And then you've got a part of you that says, I don't need to be right. I do not need to be right. You'll hear those two voices very distinctly. But when you choose the one that is acknowledging that you are one with all that is acknowledging the atonement, that is acknowledging who you are as God created you, and so is everybody else, and either they remember it or not, just as you're either remembering or not, something magical begins to happen. You begin to feel a guidance that will guide you to help you navigate so many things that one day you'll look back and go, oh my God, I cannot believe this idea came out of nowhere, but it made me feel so peaceful. This thought came out of nowhere and I let that go, and wow, that made me feel so peaceful. How can a thought come out of nowhere? Well, it's because All that knowledge of how to navigate the world with love, with joy, with peace is already inside of us. We're just letting it come out little by little because we're not letting the ego hold the dimmer down. We've taken control back of the dimmer and we're saying, no, we're going to turn it up. We're going to turn it up. And of course, sometimes it's a little slow process. Sometimes you turn it up and boy, it gets really bright and you dim it down because the ego starts talking. But you have more power than you've ever thought that you had. And that's what's so beautiful about the Course in Miracles. Instead of the ego taking all that power to use it for itself, you're taking that power and you're using it, yes, for yourself first, but you're using it to accept that power for all mankind. You realize, oh my gosh, we all have the power. We remember it or we don't. I'm not going to judge them because they don't remember. I'm going to show them what it's like to remember. We become a beacon of that example of how we came to remember. Paragraphs is 5 tells us that the shorter applications are to be frequent and made whenever you feel your peace of mind is threatened in any way. The minute you feel that ego pulling down the dimmer, you're going, no, 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 no. I want more light. I want to see clearly here. I want to see what's happening here. And you then begin to decide, no, peace is more valuable to me than being right. Peace is more important than the ego judging somebody else. Peace is more important than revenge. Peace is more important than being a victim. So the purpose is to protect yourself from temptation throughout the day. You're protecting yourself from the ego lowering your light. This is what you're doing. Once you're committed to that high frequency, once it feels good to be at peace, it feels good to extend love. Now you have trained yourself into what you prefer. And the Course tells us you got to know what you want. In the beginning, the ego wants money and to be acknowledged and wants to be well known or be left alone or whatever. The ego has its own ideas. When you commit to those 3 things, love, joy, and peace, and that's it, they begin to expand a whole new world for us. But we have to trust that those things become what we really want. And when they become more valuable than stuff, than relationships, connections with people out of fear, then you will become very clear. You don't want your peace of mind to be threatened. You become a guardian of that peace for yourself. So the purpose is to protect yourself from temptation throughout the day. The ego's going to dim the light. It's going to happen. The thought's going to come in and you're going to dim your light. The more you practice this, the more you hold that light steadily on. And you know what's amazing? The more you hold that love, joy, and peace, the clearer you'll see because you got more light to see what the ego has been doing in the darkness. Such a perfect analogy for what's happening in the world. Sentence number 3 says, if a specific form of temptation arises in your awareness, the exercise should take this form. I could see peace in this situation instead of what I see, what I see in it. You're beginning to say, okay, this thing is no longer peaceful. This thing is no longer, judging or blaming or playing the victim. That's no longer peaceful. I want to get back to peace. So the more that we practice it, the more that we can tell the difference in these frequencies, because it is a frequency. You're becoming comfortable with that peace that passes all understanding. You cannot understand it, but you will feel it as you make the shift from the fear-based thoughts to the thoughts that, and see where they're unloving to you. And once you recognize that they're unloving to you, you then have to let them go, shift, and lift back into love. And love and peace and joy always go hand in hand. Paragraph number 6 is, if the inroads on your peace of mind take the form of more generalized adverse emotions, such as depression, anxiety, or worry, use the idea in its original form, which is very simple. I could see peace instead of this. If you're worried, if you're anxious, you may not be able to say to be able to recognize peace instead of the thing that's happening. Your mind is just not prepared for that, but you are prepared to say, I want peace. I could see peace instead of this. I just don't know how to right now. So it's a more gentle way of dealing with the more active emotion of anxiety or of worry and concern, depression, because those are, the dimmer is so low when you're feeling that, that just a little bit of turning the light up is helpful, but you don't quite know what to do to get out of it. So just the desire for peace. I could see peace. I know it's going to be possible for me. Then you go on to sentence number 2. If you find you need more than one application of today's idea to help you change your mind in any specific context, try to take several minutes and devote them to repeating the idea until you feel, again, there's a word, you have to feel some sense of relief. Shifting and lifting from low frequency to high frequency is going to give you big relief, but sometimes just a little shift is enough, just a little relief. And it will help you if you tell yourself specifically, I can replace my feelings of depression, anxiety, or worry, or my thoughts about this situation, this personality, or this event with peace. You're beginning to strengthen the ability that you have to replace those thoughts. You can replace that feeling. You're learning that you're not a victim, because who's in charge of how you feel? You are acknowledging, I can replace those feelings. Everything that we're dealing with here is simply the ability, and it's stated right there inside of sentence number 2. All of this is to help you change your mind. You can change your mind. You can choose to believe different thoughts. Your mind is yours. You're in control of it, and you are the only one that can rule your mind. And this is something victims have to understand. You are in control of your opinion about what happened to you. This is where, if you don't understand that, victimization is to say, they made me feel this way. The actual fact is that they did something to you, but how you feel about yourself because of what they did is 100% under your control. Very challenging for an ego that hasn't gone through the proper training, because the awakening hasn't happened yet. The awakening is that desire to see things differently. It just begins to well up inside of you. You know something is off. There's got to be more than just this. That is the process of the true awakening. But don't stop at just gathering more spiritual information, just gathering any kind of more information. Go all the way to being totally, completely responsible for the feelings that you have. And don't stop until love, joy, and peace become the feeling that you have decided you deserve to experience all the time. Not just when you go on vacation, not just when somebody gives you a present, but a consistent experience of that love, that joy, that peace that are our birthright. And why are they our birthright? Because they are what we're made of. We're made of the light that experiences love, joy, and peace. We're made of the substance that is love, joy, and peace inducing, because it's connected to everything. It's part of all that is. So it's just beautiful reminders of how powerful we are. These simple steps, if you commit them to memory, or write them down if you have to. In the beginning, I had to write them down. I had little sticky pads everywhere that would remind me, shift and lift, and my steps in there. Like I said, 5 years before I ever read the course. And then I read this, and it's like, there's only one way out of this insanity. And that is to recognize those fear-based thoughts. When you get that irritation, they're an invitation for you to look at the underlying unloving thought. Because the underlying unloving thought is where you block the light from coming through you. You block love. This is why you're not a victim, because your thought is in your head. You're the one thinking it. It's in you. So you can choose not to believe it. That's when you begin to practice self-love. Because when you choose not to poison yourself with thoughts about other things, people, places that they're not feeling your pain, when you decide not to continue to be so unloving to you, and you begin to love yourself enough to want to feel peace, to want to feel better, man, that's when things really they speed up on this journey. That's the shift and the lift into the higher frequency. Because the minute you know, you don't have to think that thought and you let it go, you just gave you exactly the relief that you were hoping for. Now you're in control. And that's what Jesus wants us to understand. He was in control of how he felt on the cross. The whole world was upset with everybody else. Everybody was mad at the Pharisee and the this one and Pontius and whatever. But Jesus was like, I'm not upset at him. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing so that I can bring you this lesson. That's we can do it. He did it, we can do it. Take control of how you want to feel. Your life will change dramatically. And if you want to be with a community that is practicing this on an ongoing basis, come join us in the Awareness Academy. This is my favorite subject. All right, friends, I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. See you guys later. Bye-bye.